Welcome to IBBA Insights, providing expert advice on buying or selling small businesses. IBBA Insights is presented by the International Business Brokers Association, the world's largest nonprofit organization for those helping others sell or buy businesses. Now, here's your host, Crest Diglio.
Welcome to today's episode of IBBA Insights. I'm your host, Crest Diglio. I'm really excited for today's show. I know I say that before most every show. I'm excited about this one, but really the topics we bring to the table excite me. So it's almost a selfish purpose for doing the podcast. I get to learn and hear from great individuals just like you do. So it serves as a dual purpose. I get to bring great information to you, but I get to hear it as well. In today's episode, we're going to talk about technology, and technology changes at a rapid pace. We all ask ourselves, am I keeping up? And that's the question every business broker asks themselves every day, 365 days a year. So how can I utilize technology to better serve my business and better serve my clients and the results that I deliver to them? Well, we're going to ask a person who's recognized as a leader throughout our industry for his use of technology in business brokerage. Today's guest holds a bachelor's degree in accounting, a master's in finance from Harvard University, and an MBA from Texas A&M. He's built and sold multiple businesses on his own, including one that scaled to over 90 employees. Now, here's the most impressive part. Well, one of the most impressive parts. He's won the IBBA's Top Dealmaker Award 7 times in a row. The most impressive part really is, as great as he's done and as great as he's been in this industry, he's as humble of a human being you'll ever going to want to meet and always happy to share the information. So today I'm happy to welcome to IBBA Insights, Mr. Trent Lee from First Choice Business Brokers in Las Vegas, Nevada. Trent, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here. That intro makes me sound way better than I am, but I am happy to be here.
And I would tell you that intro doesn't do you justice. So we could, well, hey, if this were negotiating, we'd try to find some common ground, but I'm going to praise you to the moon and back because you do a great job and you share so much.
I appreciate it.
So thank you.
Appreciate it.
So I want our listeners today to kind of get a feel for who you are. And in order to do that, I always like to set a foundation. So what did you do prior to becoming a business broker, Trent?
I had ADD entrepreneur in me. I started businesses, some of which did okay, and I was able to exit from a couple of them. Some of them were flops. They died, didn't work out. But the quick story is I was able to exit from 2 of them. And I went through the process of working with a business broker. And not only that, if even going a little bit further, my father, I grew up in an entrepreneur family. My father had a very large company, depending on the time of the year, between 500 to 700 employees. And I watched him be bought out by a private equity group growing up. And so I'd gone through that same process, although much smaller businesses, working with business brokers, and thought, you know what? I think I can do a better job than some of these business brokers that I was connecting with. And that's what got me into the industry.
That was going to be my next question. So thank you for asking it. Everyone always wants to know, how did you become a business broker? Because, I don't think you wake up one day and you go into high school and it's career day. You decide, you know what? I think I'm going to be a business broker. Now, because of everything that's happened in our industry, that might change, where the younger generation today may actually see that as a viable path. But most of us don't start off thinking, hey, I'm gonna be a business broker.
Yeah, you're right. Mine was a little bit different in the sense that I watched my father sell his company right as I was graduating high school, and my younger brother, my father took he and I both through that process. I now as a business broker, I think I don't see sellers out there bringing their kids along the process, but my father allowed us to really go through a lot of that, and we saw that firsthand, and I really became intrigued I liked the business broker side. My younger brother liked the legal aspect, and both of us ended up it took us a little bit to get there, but we both ended up back in where we kind of started back in high school days, thinking, you know what, I'm intrigued by this. I went down the business broker route. He went down the legal route and does a lot of the aspects for these type of transactions. It just took us a while to get there. And to your point, it rightfully should. Most people coming right out of high school aren't prepared and don't have the life experience or the background or the knowledge to do any of that, what we do now.
It sounds like experiences with our fathers have both played a part in our career of becoming business brokers. My dad was a serial entrepreneur and decided, to buy a business after he had retired to Florida from New York, and he kept meeting business broker after business broker and was so disappointed with the experience that I could do a better job than this, and
Yeah.
got into the business. And years later, I got in and I followed him. So our
Yeah.
fathers, nice of them to pave the way for us in one
Thank
way or
thank
another.
goodness for good families, right?
Yeah. Amen. So today we're talking about technology. In the beginning, when you started in business brokerage, how much did technology play into your business and how has that evolved over time?
I've always been kind of a tech junkie. I love systems, processes, procedures. I love automation in everything I've done before, even before I was a business broker. I naturally gravitate for two reasons. One, because I like that. I like keeping up with technology. I like becoming more efficient. I like becoming better and more effective individually in anything I'm involved in. But two, I'm also inherently, I don't want to use the word lazy because I certainly am not lazy like from that standpoint, but I'm lazy in the standpoint that if I'm doing something, the same thing over and over again, the same day or the same week, my natural tendency is to think, you know what, this has got to be, we've got to automate this. We've got to systematize it. If I'm answering the same questions over and over again, if I'm doing the same thing, that's usually a sign, the way I look at things, that's a sign of some sort of a weakness in my system or my process that's reoccurring, bringing up this reoccurring question or this reoccurring task that needs to be done. And I try and then look for ways to automate that to one, make it more efficient because I like, as I mentioned, I like becoming more efficient. I like becoming better. But two, I don't want to have to do the same thing over and over again and go through that mundane process.
Business brokers are out there listening to this right now. I mean, I'm intently. They're like, all right, let me turn the volume up because I want to hear what Trent has to say. You touched on a one or two of them, but what areas of your business is technology most prevalent? And can you name some of the top things business brokers should be utilizing technology for today?
Yeah, so the easy answer, and we can dive into more details, is everything.
I knew you were
Literally,
going to say that.
as much as technology can play a role in. But let's just talk about some basic, like really basic bottlenecks that business brokers may run into. If a business broker is still manually sending out NDAs and vetting and qualifying the buyers and sending out the pitch deck or the SIM or whatever we're calling it, and going through that process, they become a massive bottleneck to their own business broker's success. And so having a CRM, and look, I don't really care what CRM, they all kind of for the most part do the same thing and have the same functionality here, but you've got to have a CRM that has these systems that are built in that does a lot of this automation for you, because it can take away hours and hours, where I sometimes see business brokers who have fantastic experience and fantastic knowledge, but they're essentially holding themselves back because they're so caught up in trying to do everything manually, where they could do two or three times the amount of transactions they did if they would embrace technology. And I sometimes hear these business brokers like, oh, I'm a little bit older for that. That's not my natural tendency. Well, here's the great thing. With the age we live in, with ChatGPT and YouTube, you can learn anything fairly quick. And so, yeah, maybe technology isn't your natural strength, but that doesn't mean you ignore it. That doesn't mean you pretend it's not important. It doesn't exist. You simply just spend the time to go and learn it and implement the systems, or find the right people that can implement the technology for you.
You hear a lot of excuses. So those sometimes are, and then not that they're not valid, right? Sometimes, I'm too old. I don't want to. I'm not sure. It's overwhelming. I'm not quite sure how to do it. But then you also hear some legitimate conversation points when someone says, all right, if I'm sending out an NDA to someone that inquires about a company, and then I'm sending out marketing material such as a SIM once they sign that NDA and it's returned, how can I ensure that the level of confidentiality is still high and that I'm actually talking to someone. How do I vet that person in that way? And that's what I'm afraid most of, right? I'm going to breach confidentiality and cause my clients harm. How do you address that?
Yeah, it's as simple as depending on how confidential the listings are. Sometimes I do what we call a level one or a level two, where I'm relying on technology to get out the level one if it's really confidential, where they have minimal information, and they don't get the level two until there's more of a what I like to refer to in the way I do things is I approach things with a high tech or a high touch approach. I'm using everything I can from a high tech standpoint to automate the follow-up process. Sometimes that is immediately a level two that goes out there where people get all the information they need if it's not ultra confidential. Sometimes I'm using high tech just to get a level one out there. And then I have to come in with a high touch component. That's where I'm not automating. That's where I am having a conversation. That's where I'm vetting them a little bit more before they get the level two. But it's a really simple solution here. One of the things that is key, at least in the way I approach things, is follow up is not a task. Follow up is a strategy. And if you don't have a strategy that's building a system to automate and make that follow up process, you're again becoming the bottleneck to the process to your own success as a business broker. And so the way I approach it is the deal lives or dies by my efficiency and my follow-up. And so I'll give you just an example since we're talking kind of about how I'm using technology and the follow-up process here, especially on the buy side. And we can talk about the sell side if you'd like here. But on the buy side, not only am I automating all the follow-up, the communication, but this is really key. And I don't see a lot of business brokers doing this. And I can't tell you how important it is. I can't tell you how many, not just weekly, do I get people, buyers saying thank you. Literally daily, I'm getting buyers saying thank you for what I'm about to explain. But every step in the process, I'm automating it and I'm putting together a video where I'm in front of the camera, just like we're doing now, and it's not rehearsed, it's not in a professional studio, it's just me getting in front of the camera. When a buyer, for example, inquires about a listing, they instantly get a text message from me. They instantly get the NDA emailed to them, and they instantly get a video where I'm explaining to them. Because for me, I'm working with a lot of first-time buyers. They don't know what an NDA is. Some of them, they don't know why confidentiality is important. They see their neighbor's house for sale and with the address and the pictures, and they wonder, well, how come the business doesn't? They just don't get it. It's a first-time buyer, and we can't expect them to know they're first-time buyers. And so they get a video from me instantly explaining what an NDA is, explaining why confidentiality is. I explain what they need to do. And then in that video, I explain what happens next. After they sign the NDA, then I'll send them the pitch deck or the SIM. When they sign the NDA, then they immediately get an email and a text message from me with another video, thanking them for signing the NDA, telling them check their inbox in about 2 or 3 minutes. They'll have the pitch deck, the executive summary to review. And then that video explains what the pitch deck is, what to look for, questions that they should be asking the seller if they're thinking about buying a business, how I came up with the valuation, what SDE is, what EBITDA is, what market multiples are. I take a very educational approach every single step of the way. And then if they're interested, and they want to meet with me, I have, guess what? Another video that goes out explaining to them how to prepare to have a good meeting with me, with a business broker. I want to make sure that they come prepared. So again, I'm trying not to waste my time. I'm trying to be efficient. So I'm collecting some information up front and I'm having them prepare ahead of time. If I meet with them, again, I'm now going from high tech over to high touch where I have a meeting with them and they feel like this business might be a fit and they want to meet with the seller, then guess what they get? An email, a text, and a video explaining as a buyer, here's what you can expect to have the best buyer seller meeting. Here's what you can do to show you're credible. Here's what you can do to prepare for the meeting. Here's what I want you to think about. Come prepared with questions, come prepared with whatever, the video explains what they can do. And then if they, after that meeting, if they're interested, Then, as you guessed it, they're getting another video from me explaining what happens next. Now it's time to make an offer. Now here's what I need you to think about: the price, the terms, the structure, the due diligence period, the contingencies, all of those components. And then in that below that video, they've got a link to my calendar where they can book a time to meet with me to start drafting the terms of the offer. And so every single step of the way in the buyer process, I'm automating it, but I'm educating them. So I'm using education and automation to make things efficient, but I'm using video to create trust. And that's where high touch comes in, is you can't automate and you can't outsource AI to build trust. That's where you have to do it in either a video format or a high touch component where you're actually meeting, having Zooms, having calls with the buyer. But that's my approach on the buy side.
Yeah, I was just taking a note because I wanted to repeat something you said, because I love to, go from high tech to high touch. And a lot of people become fearful of, hey, I automate too much, I'm going to lose that personal touch. But you've just dispelled that myth very, very, very clearly. I mean, there is a way of doing it in a way where it doesn't take away from that personal touch. And from what you've just explained and the way I understand that you do it, it actually enhances that personal touch. And you're right, it
Yeah, video.
builds that trust.
Yeah, video allows you to build authority, credibility, and educate the buyer. And it still establish that trust without having to do the same. Because let's be honest, I got tired of having the same conversation with buyers explaining what SDE is, what market multiples are, how valuations work, why I came up with the sales price. So again, I'm looking to automate it, but I'm not looking to automate it through just like text AI sending out messages. I'm using video because here's the reality. My personal opinion is you don't need more buyers. You need a better system to manage the buyers you already have. We all have enough buyers. If you can figure out a way to make the buyer process more efficient and to better educate the buyers, you'll have enough buyers for to last a lifetime and be a very successful business broker. But you have to couple it with high touch and high tech together, and there's a balance there. I don't think, this sometimes comes up. I don't think AI is going to replace us as business brokers, but I'll tell you what, AI will replace the business broker who doesn't eventually embrace it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. It's not something you can ignore. It's not going away. It's only going to be used more and more. And if you don't embrace it, it'll probably put you out of business, or it'll take your business from a higher level, and you won't do as well. Talk about having a lot of buyers and having to keep up with the buyers and all of that great stuff. But in order to have a lot of buyers, or what good are buyers if you don't, have a lot of listings or something to sell them, or something to share with a buyer?
Yeah.
Technology utilized on the sell side, on the listing side, we're going out and trying to attract other companies, and not looking for you to give away your proprietary information or deep secrets, but how can one use technology to assist in that area?
Well, technology is speed and efficiency, and speed builds trust. It's one of the biggest frustrations I hear from buyers. And in fact, when I was going through the process, I ran into the frustration myself, is business brokers, if they don't use technology, they're slow to respond. And it could be because they're just overwhelmed. They're trying to do everything, but it could be also they're just naturally a little bit slower. And if you're slow to respond, then your deals will naturally move slow. So speed builds trust. And if your follow-up process is slow, then your deals will be slow. And CRM technology allows you, to your question, allows you to use speed to your advantage to not only make deals progress faster, but speed builds trust. I'm a big advocate of using all the I mean so many different benefits of technology, but one of which is just the speed of which you can handle and build that trust and that authority that with your buyers.
Yeah, and the speed plays into also your time, because to do the same thing over and over again, the repetitive nature of everything that we do, you create the one video for the one specific thing that's used for thousands of people, and you don't have to do it 1,000 times. You do it the one time.
Yeah. Yeah. One other component I really look at is sometimes I'll hear this phrase that the money isn't in the listing, but the money's in the list or the relationship you have with that list. And you can use, that's why I'm such a big proponent of video, is not only am I making videos for every single step of the way along the buyer process, which we've talked about, but I do the same thing on the sell side, every single step of the way with the sell side. But I send out probably once a week a long form video to my buyer list where I'm not interested in the size of my list, although I have a really good database of buyers and sellers. I'm interested in the relationship I have with that list. And that relationship, nowadays, you don't build a really good relationship with a list, an email list, by just sending them text, like text emails. You can do it through video.
Interesting. It's very evident that video is a huge part of everything you do within your business. And, AI generated materials, including pictures, videos, creation of your marketing materials, as you've said, time savers, save a tremendous amount of time. How long does it take to become proficient in utilizing AI or prompting AI to get the desired results you're looking for?
That's a good question. It's a little bit like asking, how long does it take to be healthy? I mean, it's like an ongoing thing. Honestly, you just start taking baby steps. You start with a couple tasks, you start with a couple habits, you start with a couple things that you can change and control. Same thing, it goes with technology. I'm in AI and automation and prompt engineering. I'm constantly learning and tweaking and changing and adjusting. And that's one of the things sometimes as I talk with different business brokers out there, they'll look at my system, my process, and I'll explain like all these videos and automation. And they look at this and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. Well, here's the great thing. Just pick one or two tasks that you just keep having to do over and over again. And this week, just tackle one. Just do one video this week and build that into your process. And next week, you do another one. And before you know it, 6 months down the road, you've got a really good system in place, but you can't tackle it all at once. Otherwise, you just get overwhelmed and you don't know where to start. And so the same thing goes with, to answer your question, I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly tweaking. I'm constantly thinking about, oh, you know what? I should have made this video, or I need to make this video, or address this topic. Or I hear on another podcast about, for example, I heard one just the other day, just yesterday actually, about a pre-due diligence process. And I've never really heard of that before, but as I learned it, I'm like, man, I really like that for certain deal sizes. And I thought, you know what, I can implement that type of a step into my process. And so the process is never done, or I can never say I'm proficient in AI, because you're always learning and improving and tweaking. And that's the fun of just life in general, is you're never done. You're never, accomplished. You're never a success. You're always keep working and becoming better.
I watched a colleague of mine when he first started working on AI generated materials, and he was working on a roofing company that he was taking to market. And he said, create a picture that would best describe a roofing company. Well, as you can imagine, that wasn't very good. So then he said, okay, make it that it's a roofing company, the picture where the roofer is on top of a roof. And he's like, oh, that's a little better. Make it to where he's on top of a roof on a sunny day with palm trees behind him and some shingles that are, and then to make him wearing a white shirt with a cap. By the time he got done and started going through the prompts, it was almost like a game to him. He's like, wow, look at all that I could do just by knowing what I'm looking for and explaining it. And the outcome was, from when he started to when he finished, was so different.
Yeah, it's the same thing with CRM, right? Garbage in equals garbage out. Same thing with AI prompting. If you don't give it really good specific instructions, who knows what the output is. But there are, and this is what I love about AI. For example, the opposite example is if I go to IKEA and buy a set of furniture and I get this really bad set of instructions, I can't ask the instructions how to, what am I supposed to do next? I'm confused. but you can with AI. You can go to AI and say, look, I need to create an image of a guy on a roof. Provide me a suggestion. What is I call it, in fact, there's a chatbot called the perfect prompt. I use the perfect prompt chatbot all the time. I tell them what I'm needing, and it will output the prompt, and it helps me learn. As I see that over and over again, I start to then just naturally learn what good prompts look like. You become a little bit of a prompt engineer because you can see how detailed the prompts get rather than putting kind of garbage in and hoping it comes out. You learn how to then leverage AI to make AI even better. You can ask AI to help you improve, and that's the same thing like goes with my own deals. For example, before I take a deal to market, I'm running it through AI. I call it, I've got a whole prompt. I've got like probably 30 or 40 prompts that I have saved, or chatbots that I have saved that are specifically trained. And I've trained them, all of these based on my own process and what I'm looking for certain tasks. One of my chatbots, one of my tasks here is I call it my shark bot. I want my deal shark. I load in my pitch deck, my executive summary, and I have it critique it, and I have it tell me what did I miss? What did I not address? What is lacking? What's vague? If you are a potential buyer, where are some red flags here? And it spits out all these potential issues that I can then go back and redo or clarify or amend before I go to market, because AI can essentially make your output better as you ask it for feedback on everything you're already doing.
And you'll appreciate this one. I have a friend of mine who owns an appliance repair company and decided, you know what? I really want to do a podcast, but I don't have time. He he played around and had created an AI generated podcast between an appliance repair company and a customer and or someone else in the industry. He created like 3 or 4 of these videos just for fun and sent them over to me to watch. And I was like, wow, that's so amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's getting really good. I've played around with doing AI videos of myself,
Yeah.
and the technology's not quite there. I mean, eventually it will get there. But again, my focus here is making sure I have a line of demarcation between high tech and high touch. And my goal is not to replace myself, like to never have high touch, like have the human aspect of what we're doing. My goal is just to move the needle of high tech over so that I can spend where I think my most important time is, where I spend my high touch. That's where I want to spend as much of my time. So if I can use technology to automate all the high touch or high tech aspect, then that's really what I'm after. The goal is not to use AI and technology to completely make myself worthless, which I don't think it will be, but there's a balance there.
Time. We've talked about time quite a bit today. You're sitting there and you have these tasks in front of you. What goes into your mind, your decision making process as to when am I going to deploy Trent to do something, or when am I going to employ technology or AI to do something so you can be freed up to do other stuff? What's your balancing? Like, what's your point of this is where I make my decision?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'll add one component to it. It's not a decision of using technology versus me. There's a third component. It's using technology, outsourcing it to an assistant, or doing it myself. And here's the way I approach it. I take let me give you just a rough general estimate here. Let's say I'm just making something up. A business broker take their how much they made last year, $250,000. If you take that divided by $2,000 or 2,000 hours, roughly the amount of hours you work, you get $125 an hour. If you then take that by 50%, what I'm looking at is if I can outsource a task for less than $75, because that $250,000 divided by 2,000 hours, $125 an hour divided by 50% that's my benchmark, at least in this made up example. So if I can outsource a task for less than $75 an hour to either automation or an assistant, then that's my benchmark. That's what I'm looking at. Anything above that is where I need to be spending my high touch. I need to be doing that. I need to be spending the time because that's where my best and highest use of my time is. And so that's the basic framework I work from to determine either I'm outsourcing it to an assistant or technology. And here's the reality. If a business broker doesn't have an assistant, then they are the assistant. They have to do all those tasks. So if you can get to the point where you look at your total amount of hours, total income versus divided by the hours, take that by 50%. If you can hire an assistant, even if you made a quarter of that, you can still afford to hire an assistant and outsource the things that are becoming the bottleneck. And almost always, if you're then using technology to outsource and the stuff that's under that hourly wage to an assistant, you spend the time where you are what I like to call the superpowers, your best use, the highest use of your time. You will make up more than enough money to pay for the technology or the assistant.
You hear that term in real estate all the time, HABU, right? HABU, highest and best use. So yeah, the highest and best use of your time is critical because now you could do a whole lot more things. If you have an admin or several admins, depending on how large you are, different department managers or however it's going to be, however large you scale your company. Let's get down to the nitty gritty then. Okay, I'm a business owner. I'm talking to someone about selling my business. All I really care about is selling my business, getting the most money for my business, based on what the market is today. So tell me how all this technology stuff, right? If they might look at you and say, how does that value me trying to sell my business? I'm going to hire someone to do that. Where does the value to me come for someone that is technologically advanced and utilizing it? How's that to my benefit as a business owner looking to sell?
That's a really great question. There's a number of benefits. Let me just tell you one of them. I'm to the point now where, I mean, we've talked about the importance of video and how efficient it is. But let me tell you how I use it, at least one of the ways I use it on the sell side and how it benefits the seller. So I'm to the point now where I almost do not take a listing unless the seller will get on a Zoom meeting, just like we're doing now, and I have a 45-minute to an hour-long Zoom meeting with them. And I'm asking them all of the common questions. And I'll tell you why I'm doing that. There's two reasons. And for the most part, everyone gets the first reason, but they might miss the real true reason I'm doing it. We'll hit on both of those. But the first reason I'm doing it is, and I tell the seller this, and they all of a sudden get it. And they're like, oh, why isn't anyone else doing this? I can't tell you. This is literally a game changer. If anyone is listening to this podcast and there's a big takeaway, then follow this one, implement this one. The reason and what I tell these sellers is, look, I'm going to go to market and I'm going to have whatever 50 inquiries over the next month or two. Out of those inquiries, it's my job to vet them, to qualify them, to make sure they're okay. Let's say we have 15 of those that are interested and they want to have a conversation. Well, Mr. Seller, you're busy running the business. My goal is to not take a bunch of time away from you so that you can talk to 15 buyers and have them all ask you the same basic 15 or 20 questions. They all are going to ask you, why are you selling? What do you do? When did you start it? What your involvement is. They all have the same basic questions. So if you and I can get on the phone or on Zoom, I'm going to record it. I'm going to interview and I'm going to ask you those 10, 15, 20 questions. I'm now going to make those 15 buyers watch the seller interview before they meet with you. And now out of those 15 buyers, we might have 6 or 7 that come out the funnel on the bottom and say, you know what, this is a really good fit. Well, great. The other 8 or 9 or however many, we don't want to waste our time with them. And it took no time from you, from your end, Mr. Seller. We want to then spend time with the 5 or 6 that come through the funnel, that know the history, they know the background, they know what you do, and they've already been vetted. They want to be qualified. That's who we want to spend our time with. And when you present it that way to sellers, they're like, they're not so nervous anymore about getting on camera or being recorded. They all of a sudden now see what's in it for them as to why it's such a benefit to just do this recording with me that I'm talking about. So that's one reason. But I'll tell you, that's not really the true reason I'm doing these seller interviews. Now, yes, it's 100% more efficient and it's so effective. Like I said, I rarely even take a listing now where I don't get on and do that seller interview. But I'll tell you the real true reason is because I use AI to transcribe that interview and I run it through. I have a custom chat bot and I run that entire hour-long transcript. And at this point, it takes me on average 12 minutes to create a full pitch deck because I've taken all of that information and I've got my AI trained where it just spits out and it autofills my template for my pitch deck and it's completely done. And that's where you're taking chaos and trying to systematize it and using technology to leverage. Most business brokers are either outsourcing the sim, costing them a bunch of money, or spending hours on it. And I'm telling you, this using technology from a side standpoint, it takes me, like I said, 12 minutes on average, and I have an entire sim built and ready to go to market.
You dropped several nuggets on us, so I'm going to touch on them one by one. First, you do what we teach in a lot of the IBBA courses, and when I'm training brokers, differentiate yourself from your competition. So the other brokers, because if you don't do that, you're just going to compete on price. So you talked about the differentiation value. So amazing. Then you look at genius. I mean, you deal with 50, 60, 75, 100 people inquiring on a business. That business owner needs to run his business or their or her business, not sit down on all these different interviews. But then someone needs to make an offer on a business, and now it's not personal because it's just paper exchanging hands. And now if they didn't have a conversation, it's an LOI based on a piece of paper. You've taken that video as you do, and now the buyer gets a little bit of a feel for the seller because they've seen them, they've heard them, and they get to feel a little closer to them. So now it's a little more personal when they're going to make that offer on the company. And then, time wise from your assistant side, your side, or whoever's creating the sim, those 20 hours that would go into creating a sim down to 12 minutes, 15 minutes. I don't care if it's an hour. But it's 12 minutes, right? You said so because of how you've designed it and programmed it with your prompts. I mean, it's game changing.
Yeah, and I'll add two more things to that component. Like I said, literally, it's the single most important thing a business broker could start doing in their practice. But there's two more things. Sometimes I'll have business brokers, I'll tell them, and then they're like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to start doing that. For whatever reason, some of them do, some of them don't. But here's the thing. Don't get so caught up thinking that you then have to spend time. Again, remember the name of the game here is efficiency. So I'm not creating these seller interviews to then spend hours editing it and making it look all pretty and doing headers and intros. It takes me no time. I hit record on Zoom and that's the output. There's no retakes, there's no redos, there's no editing. And I'll tell you why. If you're in a buyer position and you're watching a video interview, which first off, I can't tell you how many people say thank you for doing that as a buyer. They're like, no one is doing these video interviews. It's so helpful rather than give them a 30, 40 page sim and just hope they get all the information just to sit down and press play. I can't tell you how many times I hear that. But here's the thing, from a buyer standpoint, you don't want to edit anything because what naturally happens is if a buyer sees a video with a seller that's been edited, they naturally think, what did the broker take out? What do they not want me to see? And so editing in this standpoint causes a loss of trust and credibility. And so it takes me no time at all. And so it should not take a broker any time. This should be a tool to make things more efficient, not add more things on their to-do list. And then the second component of that, the video editing, or I'm sorry, the video interview doesn't stop with the seller and myself. Because what I do is from that first initial video interview, as I talked about, I create the sim, but I also create a Q&A section in the pitch deck. Now, guess what happens? Once I have someone vetted and qualified and they've gone through and they watched the video and they're ready to meet the seller, my first meeting is on Zoom. And often those buyers, because they're qualified, are asking better questions than I would necessarily know, or questions that I missed. Well, guess what? That is transcribed, and those Q&As get added to the sim. My pitch deck becomes a living, breathing document that gets better and better every single time I have a buyer meeting. And so don't let this pitch deck isn't done. It's not one and done and you never think about it. Make that document become better and more qualified as you learn more about it and have more of these buyer seller interviews.
We started the program off by talking about, hey, we're going to talk about technology and business brokerage. I almost want to change it to efficiency in business brokerage. What are the utilization of technology leads to efficiency? But it's so true. I mean, the more efficient you can be, the more you can do in the same amount of time. So if those same 2,000 hours you talked about a little while ago, if now instead of working on 10 or 15 engagements, you're at 50 or 60 or 70 or 100, whatever it is, and still being able to satisfy the needs of those engagements without sacrificing anything to the detriment of the client. Wow. Game changer again. These are all game changers.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
You business broker out there right now listening and watching you and probably in amazement, like, man, how am I going to do that? But you have to start somewhere. So someone that's not utilizing any technology at all. I know you told them we're the first place to start, but talk. And if they're listening here thinking today, and you know what, I need to get out of this business because I'm not doing enough and I don't think I can, talk them off the ledge. Give them the best advice you could possibly give them.
Yeah, here from a purely selfish standpoint, a lot of times I hear business brokers that struggle in the industry with inconsistent income. And the reality is automation keeps you consistent, and consistency keeps you closing transactions. And so and here's the reality. Again, using technology, you can't close a deal that you didn't follow up on to begin with. And because technology does all this for you, you literally, as I mentioned before, don't get overwhelmed. Don't look at all of the steps and think, oh, I got to create all these videos and this content and these processes. Just take one bottleneck in your business this week and solve it, and one next week. And maybe you take a week off and then you do one a week after that. And the holidays are coming up in a little while and you've got a little bit more downtime. Maybe you do two that week. But I'm telling you, before you know it, 6 months goes down, is done, and you all of a sudden have a really good pipeline of automation and videos and content and systems that you've built. No one needs to build this overnight, but they do just need to take it one task at a time. And if you can get better as a business broker, just are you better this week than you were last week? And that's improvement. That's all you need. And are you better next month than you are this month? And it doesn't take a lot, but if you just kind of take it one step at a time, identify whatever the biggest bottleneck is or the constraint in your business currently, and then just solve that. And then there's always another constraint. There's always another bottleneck. And then you just focus on that one.
There's inevitably going to be people out there that are watching or listening that are just blown away. I'm like, wow, this is great stuff. And then you're going to have the other people that, the next, you don't really need that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But there's an old saying, people, the proof is in the pudding. And the man before us talking to us, he's won the IBBA's top dealmaker award, I believe, 7 years in a row. And he's not doing it because of the things that he's not utilizing, all the things he talked about. He's doing it because it helps him to get to the level that he's at. So if you're watching, you're listening, don't discount the things he's talking about. Embrace it. Learn how to use it. Trent, what did I forget to ask you?
And Chris, let me just add one thing to that.
Yeah.
What I've explained is my process. My goal here is not to come and say, this is the process or the best process. For my personality and the area and the demographic and the industry that I'm in, this works for me. The goal here is to have the broker come away with some thoughts some impressions, some ideas on what works for them. So feel free to ignore some of the suggestions. Just because I'm doing it doesn't mean you need to, or implement a few of them, but make it your own. That's the great thing about a business broker is there in so many ways of what we do. There's no way that it has to be done, or even that there's a best way, but personalize it to your approach based on your market and your personality and your demographic and in the area that you're serving.
That's sound advice. I mean, Jeff Snell and I just finished a master's course for the IBBA, instructing it for negotiations. And we say the same thing in negotiations. You can look at all these different negotiators that are at the top level you would consider, wow, they're a great negotiator. But, you know, I can't be you and you can't be me, and but you could take things from all different people and you have to make it your own. I love that you said that, because we teach that if you don't make it your own, it's going to come across as insincere, because if it's not you, you're not going to you can't live it. You can only live who you are. So if you're funny, it's good to inject humor sometimes and things. But if you're not funny and you can't carry out a joke, it's just gonna go on deaf ears. People are gonna be like, yeah, that wasn't funny. So be yourself. That was great advice, Trent.
Yeah.
What did I miss? What should I have asked you? What else? What else is out there that people should know? Give us some parting thoughts as we come to the end of this interview.
We started with buyers, talking about automation, and as I walked you through a lot of the automations and videos I'm doing for the buyers, I do the same thing for the sellers. But from my standpoint, I don't want to meet with every buyer. I just want to meet with the right ones at the right time. And from a purely selfish standpoint, technology and automations and video helps to make sure that I'm not trying to meet with every single one, seeing who is the right one at the right time. It allows them to basically kind of raise to the top on their own. And I spend my time with the people that have gone through my automation in the funnel, and they basically volunteer for themselves as being the right buyer at the right time. The same thing goes on the sell side. Um, I'm creating these videos before I even meet with the seller for the very first time. They're getting education on what SDE is, what EBITDA is, what market multiples are, how debt service coverage ratios are calculated. They're getting very specific, detailed education so that by the time I do meet them, they have a really good sense for how I'm going to valuation, how market multiples work, where we're going to pull it. And so people appreciate going through and getting that education, because for most, at least the ones I'm dealing with, these are first-time buyers and they're first-time sellers, and they just don't know. No one's really teaching them this information. And so they appreciate someone that is going to take this approach of giving them some basic education. And worst case is it's not a listing, but they walk away knowing a lot more about valuations than they did before, or a lot more about the valuation, the sales process, or anything else. And so you really just, I think you can't go wrong by taking an education first approach on both the buy side and the sell side, and then just use technology to make that a little bit more efficient.
Trent, I said it at the beginning of the podcast. I mentioned that, probably the most wonderful thing about you, of all the accolades we could talk about, is this: that you're a very humble person. You're very willing to give. You're willing to share. And I think that was clearly displayed today. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to share with our audience these things. So if someone's out there listening or watching, Trent, and they want to learn more about Trent Lee and First Choice Business Brokers, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, on social media, I'm on all the channels. If they just do a search for Trent Lee, they'll see, and they'll get a good feel for the videos that I'm posting, the content that I'm posting, the education first approach that I'm taking. And so they can find me on whatever their preferred channel, social media channel is. They can connect with me there.
Thanks again, Trent. Appreciate
Yeah, glad
again
to do
so
it.
much, and reach out to Trent. He's uh, just a wealth of knowledge and information. I look forward to seeing you soon at the upcoming conferences. We'll probably all be in attendance. I call that our homecoming, when business brokers get together and see one another. During the day, you're in the classes and all that. That's fun. But then afterwards, when you go to dinners and hang out, and really just to reconnect. So look forward to doing that, Trent. Thank you very much.
I'll see you. Thanks.
All right, everyone. It's another episode of IBBA Insights Podcast has come to an end. You can go to ibba.org/insights and you can click on the button so you could subscribe and never miss any of these episodes, or go back and watch them again and again and get to hear this information. Look, I was taking notes while we were talking today. Some of the things we do, some we don't. A lot I loved, and I'm like, wow, this is great stuff. So I'm going to go back and listen to it again, not because I like hearing myself, because I want to hear what Trent has to say again and just take it all in. I hope you do the same thing. So until next time, on the next episode of IBBA Insights, be safe, go out there, be well, do well by your clients, and I hope everything again in life is going wonderful for you. See you next time on IBBA Insights.